Greetings, church family. I want to talk to you to provide some clarity about our church's plans for moving gradually into face-to-face gatherings starting Sunday, June the 7th. We are making these plans available in written form online. You can read about them there, but I want to give you three things in this video. First of all, a brief summary of our plan. Second, some questions and answers. And then finally, a bit of a sermon to encourage you and challenge you. Here are the details of the plan. We'll have worship on campus beginning June the 7th. We will have a blended worship service at 9 a.m. and a contemporary worship service at 11 a.m. Both services will also be offered online. Community groups, we encourage to continue to meet online for the time being. There will be no Sunday morning groups for now, but space is available in the facility for groups to meet at times other than Sunday morning if you're interested. Wednesday evening prayer and Bible study will resume on Wednesday, June the 10th. We'll meet in the fellowship hall so we can spread out a little more. This meeting will also be offered online. Our ministry to preschoolers, kids, and students will continue to be primarily online for the time being. Our music ministry will resume some limited rehearsals prior to June 7th with some small groups and sections that can safely spread out for rehearsal. Now, two important clarifications about this plan. This is written in pencil, not in ink. The health situation in our community is ever-changing. Local guidelines are extremely fluid. Second of all, and this is so important, don't feel any pressure to return to the church building before you're ready to do so. Participation in online worship counts just as much as being at the building, and neither God nor your pastor will be disappointed in you if you continue to participate remotely. Now let's address some questions you may have. The first very important question is, what steps will we take to ensure health and safety once on-campus worship resumes? Well, attendance at each service will be limited by county restrictions. That's currently 10% of capacity, which would mean 110 people in our worship center, though that percentage and number may increase before June 7th. If necessary, we will set up overflow spaces for worship in our fellowship hall and/or our student ministry space. Another step is we will block off every other pew and take other steps to maintain 6 feet of physical distance between worshipers who aren't in the same household. So we're going to make sure there's space between everyone. Another thing that will help is the altered start times, 9 and 11 a.m. That will allow time to clean the facility between services, and it will reduce the potential for hallway crowding. Those who are sick will be required to stay home so you don't share what you have. And those who are at risk due to age or medical condition are encouraged to stay home and continue to participate online. We are eliminating high-touch activities. No handshakes or hugs, as sad as that is. No greeting time. We'll have offering boxes at the back instead of passing an offering plate. No coffee or refreshments provided. I'm sorry, but we got to do that for safety right now. No paper handouts, no communion trays passed around, etc. Worshipers are encouraged to wear masks, and masks will be provided for you if you don't have one of your own. Now, another important question is how this decision was made. The decision was made by church staff with advice from medical professionals. From the beginning of this strange season, I've relied heavily on 2 of our church members who are physicians and who are directly engaged in our community's response to COVID-19. Chris Moore is a family practice physician. Pat Liang is an ER physician. They've both been incredibly generous with their time and expertise through this process. And there are people in our church and in our community who are passionately convinced that we should reopen as soon as possible and that failure to do so is a sacrifice of our freedom and a hindrance to our faith. There are others who are just as passionately convinced that reopening anytime soon is a foolish risk and a failure to love our neighbors. I determined from the very beginning of this process that I would pray like crazy and seek to listen to all voices, but that I would pay special attention to Chris and Pat. They are simply smarter than I am about this stuff, and no offense, but they're smarter than you about this stuff. They recommended waiting until June, so we're waiting until June. Jackson County, here's another question that you might have. Jackson County has changed its policy and stated that churches can reopen now with some limitations, so why are we waiting? And it's true, some churches are opening now. Some churches are planning to wait several months to open. On the advice of our medical experts, we have chosen a path between those extremes. Chris and Pat suggested waiting 3 additional weeks to make sure that the loosening of local restrictions doesn't lead to a spike in coronavirus cases in our community. We are ready to get back together. We want that to happen, but we want to be wise and take the advice of those medical professionals and take that small step of caution. Another question some may have, why are we delaying the resumption of our on-campus Sunday morning community groups? This decision is a painful one as we recognize the importance of our groups, but this decision is driven by limitations of our physical space. We simply don't have enough large rooms for all of our groups to meet on Sundays and have enough space to be able to spread out. And the limited number of large rooms we do have may be needed for worship overflow spaces as we begin. Furthermore, if we've got groups meeting in one part of the building and worship happening in another part of the building, we would have additional traffic in hallways and congestion that would make it hard for us to maintain appropriate distance from one another. As soon as it is safe and legal for our groups to resume face-to-face Sunday morning meetings, we will do so. In the meantime, please make the most of those online meetings and/or the chance to meet with your group at the facility on times other than Sunday mornings. Another important question, what is the plan for ministry to preschoolers and kids and students? That ministry is challenging for us. We hope to be able to offer some opportunities for face-to-face gatherings soon for those age groups, and we'll return to regular on-campus activity when that is safe and legal. But just think, for example, that preschool ministry, to try to do that in a socially distanced way is basically impossible. And many of our preschool volunteers are in the at-risk health category, and so that complicates things as well. But we're going to do the best we can to resume those ministries as soon as we safely can and in the way that is the safest. Now, time for the sermon portion of this message, and we're almost done. Just a short sermon, starting with some encouragement. You need to know that God is at work. And even though this pandemic has created more than its share of difficulties and frustrations, God has worked through it to bless our church and to bless others through our church in significant ways. Our online services have exponentially extended our church's reach. They are being experienced every week by people who are not yet spiritually brave enough to come to a church building, even if there weren't a pandemic, but they're willing to take the safer step of checking us out online. What a blessing that is. We've got some people in our church family who were very sporadic in their attendance in the building who have become much more regular in their participation in our church through the online expressions. Online ministry will continue to be a big part of our strategy going forward, and we're blessed to have that opportunity. We are the church when we are in the building. We are also the church when we are online, and we are on the church when we are on the go sharing the love of Jesus. Speaking of that, this virus has pushed us to share the love of Jesus in some creative ways and has enhanced the spread of the good news in our community. We've had the opportunity to be a blessing to people in need, to provide for businesses in downtown Lee Summit and their employees, to share God's love with the people who are served by Lee Summit Social Services. We've been able to express God's love to healthcare workers, other ministries that would have never come our way if not for this pandemic. We might be tempted to say that the church is closed right now, but that is simply untrue. The church is still being the church, and the impact of FBCLS for God's kingdom has actually increased during this weird season. God is at work. Last part of the sermon. Here's the challenge. Let's work extra hard to cooperate with Christ's work to keep us united as a church family. My biggest concern beyond health concerns from the very beginning days of this pandemic is that it could cause church unity to be at risk. People in our society and people in our church have such strong and polarized opinions about the proper way to respond to the virus. The temptation will be strong to selfishly demand what you want and to critique and judge folks with different convictions than yours. Satan would love to see that happen. Let's not give him the pleasure. The temptation to be unkind could be exacerbated by the fact that you're worn out from being locked in your house with your family for a long time, and by the fact that when you finally get back to church, there won't be donuts, there won't be coffee, and your pew might be blocked off. So it's going to take some extra work to be kind and to be selfless. But let's make a commitment to God and to each other that we are going to love each other through this challenging time, and we're going to see God continue to work. I love you all. I'm more honored than I could possibly communicate to get to be your pastor. You please keep praying for God to guide me as I serve and lead and as I fulfill my role as a shepherd called to protect the flock of this church. And know that I'll keep praying for you, and I look forward to seeing what God's going to do next. Take care.